Chapter 10. Defining the Mission. St. Louis, mid-1874. The Thiel Detective Service Company was no longer a mere aspiration or a freshly painted sign on a door. It was a functioning enterprise with a slowly growing ledger of successfully closed cases, a small but dedicated staff, and a founder who was increasingly forced to contemplate the fundamental nature of the path he was carving. George Thiel, a man more inclined to action than to abstract philosophy, nevertheless found himself in quiet moments, often late at night, in the Olive Street office, the city's nocturnal hum a distant counterpoint to the scratch of his pen, wrestling with the implicit question that underpinned every decision he made. What precisely is the mission of this agency, George? What are we truly building here? Was it justice? He snorted softly to himself. He'd seen little enough of true, impartial justice in the world. During the war, justice had often been the prerogative of the side with the bigger cannons or the sharper spies. Might makes right, or so it often seemed, he mused. In the burgeoning industrial cities, he'd seen how swiftly the scales could be tipped by wealth and influence. His clients sought resolutions, restitution, the protection of their interests, if that aligned with some broader notion of justice, well and good. But Thiel was pragmatic. His primary duty, as he saw it, was to the individuals and businesses that paid for his services. Mr. Schmidt, the baker, his justice was finding Fritz and getting his money back, Thiel reasoned. Mr. Albright, his justice was identifying a thief in his store. Their definition of justice, often the recovery of stolen property or the identification of a deceitful employee, became his working definition. He wasn't a crusader. He was a contractor, hired to solve specific problems. We're not knights in shining armor, are we, George? He asked his reflection in the dark window pane. We're fixers. Profit, then? Undeniably. An agency, like any other business, needed to be profitable to survive, to grow, to provide a livelihood for himself and for the men like Yates and McManus who now depended on him. Can't pay the rent with good intentions, he'd often tell himself when reviewing the accounts. Thiel was meticulous about his books, ensuring that fees were fair, but also reflected the value of the discreet, effective service he provided. He aimed to build a sustainable enterprise, one that would afford him a measure of independence and the resources to expand his reach when the time was right. But profit alone felt like an insufficient answer. He had not left the security of Pinkerton's with its ample remuneration merely to replicate its financial model on a smaller scale. There has to be more to it than just the dollars and cents, he insisted internally. There was something more he sought to build. Control. This word resonated with a deeper, more complex chord. His clients, the merchants, the warehouse owners, the nascent industrialists were all, in their own ways, seeking a greater measure of control in an often chaotic and unpredictable world. Control over their assets, control over their employees, control over the information that could make or break their ventures. They come to me because they feel things slipping from their grasp, Thiel analyzed. Thiel's agency, by providing reliable intelligence, by uncovering internal threats, by ensuring the integrity of their operations, was undeniably an instrument of that control. He provided them with facts, with certainty, and facts were power. He helped them impose order where there was disarray, security where there was vulnerability. He saw no inherent evil in this. Order was preferable to chaos, efficiency to waste. For a business to thrive, for commerce to flow, a certain level of control and predictability was necessary. His work, he reasoned, contributed to that stability. If a factory owner can trust his foreman, he thought, if a railroad can be assured its cargo is safe, then business can proceed. Progress can continue. We are facilitators of that stability. It was a practical, almost mechanical view of his role. One afternoon, as Yates meticulously filed case notes, and McManus cleaned his well-worn boots after a day spent making inquiries down by the levee, Thiel decided it was time to articulate this nascent philosophy to his small team. They were reviewing a particularly tangled case of suspected embezzlement from a wholesale grocer. "This grocer, Mr. Henderson," Yates was saying, tapping a ledger, "his inventory numbers simply don't align with his sales. There's a significant discrepancy, but the paperwork trail is deliberately muddled." McManus grunted. "Henderson suspects his head clerk, a fellow named Davies. Davies lives a bit too high on the hog for a clerk's wages, or so Henderson says. Fancy vests, cigars, but Henderson ain't got proof." "Gentlemen," Thiel interjected, leaning back in his chair, "our purpose here in this case and in all our endeavors is threefold, and it is vital you understand it clearly." Yates, ever attentive, put down his pen and leaned forward slightly. McManus, who often feigned a gruff indifference but missed little of Thiel's pronouncements, tilted his chair back against the wall, arms crossed. "All right, boss, lay it on us." "First," Thiel continued, his gaze steady, meeting each man's eyes in turn, "we serve the truth, not rumor, not speculation, not what our client wishes to be true, but the verifiable facts of the matter. Our reports must be unassailable, built on a foundation of patient observation and meticulous documentation. This, he knew, was the bedrock of their credibility. No appeared shifty, McManus, unless you can tell me why he appeared shifty. What did he do?" McManus nodded slowly. "Facts. Got it?" "Second," Thiel went on, "we provide discretion. Our clients come to us with sensitive matters. They do not wish for public scandal or workplace disruption unless it is absolutely unavoidable and on their terms. We operate in the shadows, not for dramatic effect, but because it is the most effective way to achieve our clients' aims without inflaming situations or damaging reputations, theirs or ours." This was his clear differentiator from the more public, sometimes bombastic approach of Pinkerton's. "Remember Kleinschmidt? He didn't want a circus, and he wanted his problems solved quietly." Yates, who had handled the Kleinschmidt case, nodded in agreement. "He was most appreciative of the lack of fanfare, sir." "And third," Thiel paused, choosing his words carefully, "we deliver tangible results that protect our clients' interests, whether that is the recovery of property, the identification of malfeasance, or the provision of intelligence that allows them to make sound business decisions. They are paying for a solution, for a benefit. We must always be mindful of delivering that value." "So in Henderson's case," McManus said, "the tangible result is finding out if Davies is a thief, and if so, how he's doing it, so Henderson can stop the bleeding and maybe get his money back." "Precisely, McManus," Thiel affirmed. "We find the truth discreetly, and that truth protects Henderson's interest in not being robbed blind. Justice, profit, control." It was a blend, he concluded later that evening, alone again in his office. The pursuit of factual truth served a form of pragmatic justice for his clients. Delivering tangible results ensured the profitability and thus the survival of his agency, and both, ultimately, provided his clients with a greater measure of control over their affairs. This understanding began to subtly shape the agency's direction. He found himself less interested in pursuing cases of purely domestic strife, the errant spouses, or scandalous affairs that some private detectives thrived upon unless there was a clear financial or business implication. Let others handle the boudoir battles, he decided. His focus gravitated towards the commercial sphere, towards the internal integrity of businesses, towards the protection of assets, and the smooth functioning of enterprise. It was a vast, underserved market, particularly for an agency that prioritized quiet competence over public notoriety. He also realized that by defining his mission this way, he was creating a specific culture within his small but growing team. Yates, with his methodical mind, embraced the pursuit of factual truth. "The numbers must always reconcile, sir," Yates would often say. McManus, for all his rough exterior, understood the practical value of discretion in gathering information from the city's underbelly. "Can't get folks to talk if they think you're going to shout their business from the rooftops, boss." They were becoming Thiel men, absorbing his philosophy, extending his reach. The grand ambitions, the vision of an agency with a national reputation, one that could perhaps even rival Pinkerton's in specific niches, like railroad work, were still there, simmering beneath his pragmatic exterior. But he knew that such a future would only be built if the Thiel Detective Service Company remained steadfast in its core mission, to be the unseen, unheard, but undeniably effective guardians of their clients' interests, one meticulously documented fact, one discreetly resolved case at a time. The definition was clear. Now it was a matter of execution. "Truth, discretion, results," he murmured, locking his office door. "A solid foundation.